When my daughter-in-law praised her own mother in front of 30 guests, I didn't say a word. But when she slid a $3,450 bill across the table to me, I finally showed everyone what happens when the family ATM shuts down for good. The air inside the Copper Oak smelled of wood-fired steak and expensive Cabernet. My daughter-in-law Vanessa sat at the head of the long table like a queen on her throne. She was celebrating the grand opening of her new boutique skincare studio, a dream my son Julian had financed entirely with his life savings. I sat near the end of the table, quietly sipping my water and watching the scene play out. Evelyn, Vanessa's mother, stood up and tapped her fork against her champagne flute, demanding the attention of all 30 guests. "A toast to this wonderful family!" Evelyn cried, her voice dripping with performative enthusiasm. Vanessa looked at her mother, her eyes shining with pride. She took the microphone and addressed the room. "I want to give a special thank you to my mom," Vanessa said loudly. "My mom is the mother I'm truly proud of. She's the only one who always believed in my dreams." The guests clapped enthusiastically, and Julian smiled dutifully by her side. I offered 3 mechanical claps, my face remaining completely expressionless. Then the waiter walked over to our table. He didn't go to Evelyn, and he didn't go to Julian. He walked straight to me and placed a heavy leather folder right next to my water glass. I opened it without rushing. The total came to exactly $3,450. It was the bill for the entire banquet. Vanessa leaned over toward me, a triumphant smirk on her lips. "Julian said your savings account at Chase is looking pretty healthy, Eleanor," Vanessa whispered, just low enough so only I could hear. "Support your kids. It's the absolute least you can do. Everyone's waiting." I looked at the folder, then at Vanessa's smug face. I didn't waste a single word arguing. I simply closed the leather folder, placed my fingertips on the edge, and with one smooth, deliberate motion, slid it right back across the table until it hit the base of Vanessa's wine glass with a sharp clink. What happened next shifted the entire energy in the room. The silence in the restaurant was instant and absolute. It wasn't the polite hush that follows a speech. It was the suffocating vacuum that comes after a total train wreck. Vanessa stared down at the leather folder resting against her plate, her face freezing into a mask of pure shock and fury. Julian looked nervously from his wife to me, his hands frantically wringing his napkin. The guests, including a few local lifestyle bloggers and Vanessa's friends, set their glasses down and awkwardly looked away. I stood up slowly, smoothed down my skirt, and looked Vanessa dead in the eye. My voice was quiet, but completely steady and clear. "If your mother is the one you're so proud of, then she should also have the honor of paying for your evening," I said. I didn't wait a single second for a response, or for my son's inevitable excuses. I turned around, grabbed my purse from the chair, and walked toward the exit with calm, measured steps. Behind me, I heard the sharp scrape of a chair and Julian's hissed whisper, "Mom, stop, you can't do this." I kept walking, never altering my pace. I passed the hostess stand, pushed through the heavy glass doors, and stepped out into the cool evening air. Taking a deep breath, I felt the crisp wind on my face and started the walk back to my house. A strange, cold clarity washed over my mind. Since my husband passed away 4 years ago, I had constantly bailed Julian and his wife out financially, always hoping it would keep me connected to their lives. But as I turned the key in my front door and locked it behind me, I knew the rules had officially changed. In my purse, my phone was already vibrating violently. The phone rattled against the entryway console like a trapped insect. It wasn't a gentle buzz, but an aggressive, non-stop barrage. I took off my coat, hung it neatly on its hanger, and went into the kitchen to brew some chamomile tea. Only when the mug was sitting in front of me did I finally pick up the device. The notifications were stacked like bricks on the screen. Vanessa wrote, "Are you completely out of your mind?" You humiliated me in front of my investors. Do you have any idea how bad this looks? Right below that was a text from Julian. Mom, Evelyn had to max out her credit card to cover the bill. That was incredibly petty of you. You need to fix this tomorrow. Not a single line asked how I was doing. No one asked if I had made it home safely. They weren't worried about me. They were furious because their favorite financial tap had suddenly run dry. I drank my tea in small sips and deleted the notifications without replying to a single one. No justifications, no emotional outbursts. The next morning at 7 a.m., I sat at the kitchen table and logged into my online banking. I pulled up the monthly recurring transfers that had been leaving my account for the last 2 years. $150 for Julian's car insurance, $80 for their shared streaming subscriptions, $200 for Vanessa's premium health insurance supplement. With a few clicks, I canceled every single one of those transfers. It wasn't an act of anger. It was a purely mathematical correction. If I wasn't the mother they were proud of, there was no reason for me to continue subsidizing their adult lives. When I closed my laptop, I didn't feel guilty. I felt weightless. But the real test was coming that afternoon when I heard my son's car pull into the driveway. Julian walked into the house using his own copy of the key, the one he'd had since high school. He didn't even bother to knock on the kitchen door. He just stormed straight in. His face was flushed, his hair a mess. "Mom, what is this supposed to mean?" he demanded, shoving his phone in front of my face. "My banking app just notified me that the transfers for the insurance and the subscriptions were canceled. We didn't budget for that this month." I sat quietly at the table, reading the morning paper. I didn't even look up right away. As I turned the page, I said softly, "Julian, you are 32 years old. A grown man pays for his own car insurance. If money is tight, maybe you two should order less champagne at restaurants." He stared at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. He was entirely used to me backing down and opening my wallet after a little bit of guilt tripping. "But Vanessa is completely devastated." He pressed on his voice, shifting into a whiny plea. "Her studio is just getting off the ground. We needed your help. You can't just leave us hanging over a misunderstanding from last night." I folded the newspaper neatly and set it on the edge of the table. "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Julian. It was a boundary violation. And as of today, you are completely on your own." He realized his words were having absolutely no effect. Letting out a heavy sigh, he turned on his heel and slammed the front door on his way out. I looked out the window, watching him get into his car in a huff. The first pillar of their comfortable lifestyle had crumbled, and it was finally sinking in that I wasn't bluffing. That evening, I went down to the basement to pull the old financial ledgers from the past few years. I wanted to see exactly how much money had vanished into that pit. The basement was cool and smelled of dry wood. I pulled a thick gray binder labeled Family off the shelf and carried it up to my brightly lit living room. I set out a notepad and a pen. Hour after hour, I went through bank statements covering the last 5 years. Every wire transfer, every small loan for furniture vacations and apartment deposits, I wrote them all down meticulously. The numbers didn't lie. $4,500 for the renovation of their apartment. $3,000 for a certification course Julian never finished. $1,200 for a washer-dryer set they supposedly desperately needed. When I added up the column, I caught my breath. The grand total was over $24,000 in just 60 months. That was money my late husband and I had set aside for my retirement. As I wrote down the final number, my eyes fell on an old savings account statement. It was a custodial account under Julian's name that I had managed since his college days, and I still held full power of attorney over it. It had a remaining balance from his early working years. I decided right then to close the account the following morning and transfer the funds back to my main account to offset what they owed me. They had treated me like a bank that never charged interest or demanded repayment. Right in the middle of my calculations, I heard a noise at the front door. Someone was trying to turn a key in the lock, but my key was wedged inside from the evening before. It was Vanessa. She began knocking loudly on the wood. I stood up without any rush, walked into the hallway, and opened the door just a crack, keeping the security chain firmly engaged. Her eyes immediately darted to the thick binder in my hand. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. AI tools may help with parts of our workflow, but every story is carefully chosen, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating these videos, please consider supporting the channel with the price of a small coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family. Ko-fi, https://ko-fi.com/The Story Family. PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPalMe/Kan Your support means a great deal to us. Vanessa stood under the amber glow of the porch light, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She was wearing an expensive designer jacket, one she had bought using the generous cash gift I gave her for her last birthday. Eleanor, we need to talk, she said, her tone dripping with unearned authority. Julian is a wreck. You are ruining this family over a simple dinner bill. We were going to pay you back eventually. I looked at her through the crack in the door, my expression completely blank. Vanessa, you made it very clear on Tuesday night who your real family is. Your mother is the one you're proud of. So it only makes sense that you look to her for your financial needs from now on. She let out a harsh scoff. My mom doesn't have that kind of money. She lives on a fixed pension. You have the big house and Dad's inheritance. This house belongs to me, and so do my savings, I replied calmly. And I will not invest another dime into a relationship where I am not respected. Vanessa took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. If you turn your back on us now, Eleanor, you're going to lose your son. Think very carefully about whether your pride is worth sitting all alone in this giant house when you're old. A threat like that used to terrify me. I would have unhooked the chain and begged her to come inside. But tonight, it only brought a cold smile to my lips. I would much rather be alone in a quiet house than surrounded by people who only value my bank account, I said. I slowly and firmly closed the heavy door, turned the deadbolt twice, and left Vanessa standing outside in the cold. I heard her stomp her heel against the porch before her footsteps faded down the walkway. Tomorrow, I would take the next practical step. The next morning at exactly 8 o'clock, a local locksmith was standing at my front door. It took him less than 20 minutes to swap out the deadbolt cylinders. It was a necessary precaution. Julian still had a key, and I wasn't taking any chances. I paid the man in cash and set the shiny new keys on the entryway table. It felt like the physical beginning of an entirely new chapter. Right after that, I drove to the bank. I officially closed out the old custodial account and revoked Julian's access to any secondary accounts he had ever been linked to. The branch manager looked surprised, but didn't ask questions. Walking out of the building, a profound sense of peace washed over me. My finances were completely secure and entirely under my control. No one could touch them but me. When I got home, I found a note slipped into my mailbox. It was from Julian. Mom, we're coming over Sunday at 3 p.m. for coffee. We need to handle this like rational adults. Vanessa is bringing a cake. They genuinely believed a slice of bakery cake and a few sweet words would undo everything. They didn't understand that the old Eleanor didn't exist anymore. I went into the kitchen, but I didn't prepare the coffee cups or the fine china. Instead, I laid out the gray binder with the detailed spreadsheets of the last 5 years. I wasn't going to give them a stage for emotional blackmail. I was giving them a performance audit. As Sunday approached, the quiet energy in the house felt heavy with anticipation. At exactly 3 o'clock, my son's sedan pulled into the driveway. I stood by the living room window, watching them. Vanessa got out first, holding a small white bakery box and wearing a practiced, placating smile. Julian followed her, his shoulders slumped. They walked up to the porch, and I watched through the glass as Julian tried to slide his key into the lock. It didn't even budge. He tried it 3 times before giving up and pressing the doorbell impatiently. I walked over, opened the door wide, and stood firmly on the threshold. I didn't invite them in. "The key isn't working," Julian said, looking at me blankly. "I had the locks changed," I replied simply. Vanessa nudged her way forward, holding up the box. "We brought an apple tart, Eleanor. Let's go inside so we can talk this through." "There's no need for coffee and dessert," I said, pointing to the small table in the hall where the gray binder sat. "We can handle everything right here." Julian's face darkened. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You're treating us like total strangers. We're your family." "Family goes both ways, Julian. On Tuesday, you treated me like an ATM. This is just the receipt." I opened the binder and turned to the first page of the ledger. The figure $24,000 was written in bold ink at the bottom of the column. Vanessa glanced at it and waved her hand dismissively. "That's all in the past. Parents help their kids out. That's just what families do." Her arrogance was completely unchanged, but my preparation was far more thorough than she realized. I flipped the page revealing the second list, the breakdown of the recurring expenses I had officially canceled. "Starting this month, you are fully responsible for your own bills. The car insurance is terminated, the streaming accounts are under your own names, and Vanessa's health premium needs to be paid directly by you." Julian scanned the numbers, and the color completely drained from his face. He knew exactly what those sudden expenses would do to their tight budget. "But the studio isn't turning a profit yet." Vanessa snapped, her fake sweetness completely vanishing. "We can't absorb these extra costs right now. You're actively ruining my business, Eleanor. Your business was built on a lie, Vanessa. You bragged about your success using my money while acting like your mother built your world. As of today, either your proud mother can fund you or you can fund yourself." Julian looked at me, a toxic mix of anger and resentment burning in his eyes. "So you're really willing to throw away our relationship over money?" he asked quietly. I shut the binder with a heavy thud. "No, Julian. I am ending the exploitation. I am happy to have a relationship with you, but it will no longer cost me a single dime. If you only visit when my wallet is open, then you should probably leave." Vanessa grabbed Julian's arm tightly. "Come on, Julian. Let's go. She's completely bitter and miserable. Let her rot in this giant house all by herself." She turned on her heel and marched back to the car. Julian lingered for a split second, searching my face for a hint of softness, but found only steel. He turned silently and followed his wife. I shut the door and turned the new deadbolt. It was finished. 3 months have passed since that dinner at the Copper Oak and the conversation on the porch. The leaves on the old oak tree in my yard have shifted from vibrant green to a deep golden rust. My phone sits quietly on the living room side table. The screen stays dark most days. There are no frantic last-minute texts asking for emergency transfers, no demanding calls about unpaid balances. A silence like this used to fill me with an overwhelming sense of dread and loneliness. Today, it brings nothing but absolute peace. When I logged into my banking app this morning, I saw a balance I hadn't seen in years. The money actually stayed in my account. No more steady bleeding to fund someone else's comfort. I have finally reclaimed my own life. 2 weeks ago, Julian called me for the first time. His voice sounded entirely different, quieter, more grounded and respectful. He didn't mention money. He just wanted to tell me that they had traded in his sedan for a cheaper used model and that Vanessa had taken a part-time job to keep the studio afloat. I listened to him calmly and kindly, but I didn't offer a single cent. The boundary is set in stone, and he is finally learning to respect it. I'm sitting on my back porch now holding a warm mug of coffee and looking out at the autumn garden. The house doesn't feel empty or too big anymore. It feels like a sanctuary. I might have lost the illusion of a picture-perfect family, but I traded it for something far more valuable: my dignity, my independence, and my absolute peace of mind. The ledger is closed, the accounts are settled, and I am finally beautifully in the black. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. AI tools may help with parts of our workflow, but every story is carefully chosen, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating these videos, please consider supporting the channel with the price of a small coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/quiet-revenge-family, Ko-fi, https://ko-fi.com/the-story-family, PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/paypal-me/Kan Huangmin. Your support means a great deal to us.